Evening, folks. Come on in out of that cold. Hurry now. Shut the door before the frost chases you in. Shake the snow off your boots. Don't worry about the rug. It's seen worse than a little melted ice. The fire is crackling away nicely, and I've just poured a fresh cup of coffee. It's steaming hot, black as a moonless night, and strong enough to wake the dead. Sounds good, doesn't it? Pull that big armchair a little closer to the heat. That's it. Get comfortable. Tonight, I want to talk about something delicate, something that fluttered into our mailboxes years ago and made our hearts skip a beat. I'm talking about postcard pulses, crushes written in airport ink. We're going back to the swinging 60s, a time when love letters had wings and travel was the most glamorous thing on earth. You know, if I close my eyes right now, I can smell it. Not the coffee. I smell that thin, crinkly blue airmail paper. You remember that? It smelled like glue and adventure, and I can see the ink, sometimes smudged a little bit, where someone pressed their hand while writing to you from 3,000 miles away. That was the smell of longing. Now, you have to understand, back in the early 60s, when I was just a teenager with a lot of hair and not much sense, the airport wasn't a place of stress like it is today. Oh no, the airport was a palace. It was the jet age. Going to the airport was an event. People didn't wear sweatpants and flip-flops. Lord have mercy. If you showed up like that, people would think you were lost or maybe sleepwalking. Men wore sharp suits, hats fedora style, ties perfectly knotted. Ladies wore gloves, high heels, click, click, click on those polished terrazzo floors. And their hair was done up high, sprayed so stiff a hurricane couldn't move it. I remember standing on the observation deck. Yes, you could just walk out and watch the planes back then, watching a Pan Am jet scream down the runway. It was loud, it was smoky, and it was beautiful. It meant someone was going somewhere, but for a young man in love, that plane taking off was a tragedy. I remember the summer of '64. Her name was Sarah. She lived 3 streets over in a house with a white porch swing. Sarah had a smile that could stop traffic and dreams bigger than our little town. She was going to study in London for the summer. London! Right when the Beatles were turning the world upside down. To a boy from the suburbs, that might as well have been the moon. I remember the day she left perfectly. My dad let me borrow his Ford Country Squire station wagon, the one with the wood paneling on the sides. We drove to the airport with the windows down, the radio playing Motown, trying to act like my heart wasn't breaking. When we got to the terminal, it felt like walking into a movie set. The announcements echoed over the speakers. Pan American Flight 100 to London now boarding. It sounded so final. We walked right up to the gate. No security checkpoints, no taking off your shoes. We stood there by the big glass windows. Sarah turned to me, holding her boarding pass. She looked like a movie star in her trench coat. She promised to write. I promised to wait. And then she walked out onto the tarmac, up those metal stairs into the belly of that big silver bird with the blue globe on the tail. And then the silence of the suburbs in July. We didn't have FaceTime. We didn't have WhatsApp. We didn't even have cheap long distance. Calling Europe in 1964 cost nearly $4 a minute. In today's money, that's about $35 just to say hello. You'd have to mortgage the house just to talk for 10 minutes. So, we had ink. Do you remember the Aerogramme? That single sheet of blue paper that folded up into its own envelope? It was a marvel of the modern age. It cost exactly 11 cents to send a letter anywhere in the world, but the rules were strict. It had to be light as a feather. You couldn't put anything inside it. No photos, no pressed flowers, no chewing gum wrapper, or they'd send it back. You had just that one blue page to say everything in your heart. I'd sit at my desk in my bedroom under the yellow light of a desk lamp, sweating. I'd have my fountain pen ready. You couldn't just delete a mistake. If you messed up, you had to start all over. Every word had to be perfect. You had to fit your whole soul onto that one page. I wrote small, microscopic. I filled every inch of white space, writing around the edges, upside down in the corners, trying to squeeze in one more "I miss you." And then, the waiting. Young folks today, they get anxious if a text doesn't come back in 3 minutes. We waited weeks. The waiting was a physical ache. It sat in your chest like a stone. I knew exactly what time the mailman, Mr. Henderson, came down our street. 10:30 a.m., I'd be watching through the front curtains like a spy. When I saw him walking up the sidewalk with that leather satchel over his shoulder, my heart would start hammering against my ribs like a drum. Is he stopping? Is he walking past? I'd run out, trying to look casual, just whistling, and check the metal box. Most days, just bills for my dad, or a catalog. But then, maybe on a Tuesday, there it would be, a flash of blue, a stamp with Queen Elizabeth's face on it, or maybe a French stamp. That little postcard or letter had traveled thousands of miles on a Boeing 707 just to find my hand. It had Par Avion stamped in red ink. Holding it felt electric. It meant Sarah hadn't forgotten me amidst all those London lights and Carnaby Street fashions. I wouldn't open it right there on the street. No, sir, that was private. I'd take it up to my room, close the door, and sit on the edge of my bed. I'd slice it open carefully with a pocket knife. Terrified, I'd rip the words. The ink, I call it airport ink. It was usually written in a hurry. You could tell. The handwriting would be slanted, maybe a little smudged where she rested her hand on a cafe table in Piccadilly Circus or a bench in Hyde Park. Wish you were here? Those 4 words carried more weight than 1,000 text messages do today. Because when you read them, you knew that person stopped looking at Big Ben or the Palace Guards just long enough to think of you. I lived for those letters that summer. Sarah described the double-decker buses, the tea that was too strong, the boys with long hair playing guitars in the subway. Through her blue ink, I saw the world. I didn't need a TV. I had her words, and I kept them, obviously. I still have a shoebox full of them somewhere in the attic, tied up with twine. They don't beep, they don't need charging, and they never disappear into the cloud. They just stay there, quiet and faithful, keeping the memories safe. When she finally came home in late August, I was at the gate waiting hours early. I watched the passengers come off the plane, businessmen, families, and then her. She was carrying one of those square blue Pan Am bags. Everybody wanted one of those bags. And she looked different, a little older, a little more worldly. But when she saw me, that hug, well, that's a memory I'll keep for myself. So, when you're done listening tonight, I want you to drop down to the comments. Tell me, did you ever have a pen pal? Did you ever wait by the mailbox for a letter from a sweetheart who was far away? Or maybe you remember that distinct smell of jet fuel on the observation deck. I'll be reading your stories, and I bet they'll bring a smile to my face. All right, let's see if you were paying attention to old Pop tonight. I've got 3 questions for you, quick as a wink. What was the name of that special lightweight blue letter that folded into its own envelope to save money on postage? What was the name of the girl I was waiting to hear from back in the summer of '64? What airline did I mention that had those loud jets and the famous blue bags? Well, how'd you do? If you nailed all 3, why, your memory is sharper than a brand new needle on a record player. I'm impressed. But listen to me. If a couple of those answers slipped away from you, don't you pay it no mind. We aren't taking a test for school here. We're just dusting off the cobwebs together. The important thing is that we got those gears turning and shared a few minutes of peace. That's what counts. Now, if you enjoyed sitting by the fire with me tonight, go ahead and press that subscribe button. Don't think of it as clicking a button. Think of it like pulling up your own rocking chair on the front porch so it's always here waiting for you. There's always room for one more. And do me a favor and give that little bell a ring. That's just the dinner bell letting you know I've got a new story ready to serve up. Join me tomorrow night. Until then, stay warm, write a letter to someone you love, and may the Lord bless you.